And good evening. This is Dr. D tonight, and this is a video talk that I'm calling, What Did You Call Me? What did you call me? What's my name? And before we start this talk tonight, we're going to take a deep breath. But some of you have been asking about my book that's not out yet, but it's forthcoming real soon. A Place to Belong, a man and a woman living in the same body. And what has that journey been like? The release is coming very soon. And you that like our talks, remember you can go to our YouTube channel, which is Open to Possibilities, and I think it would be YouTube Open to Possibility 6900. Or you can go to our website, which is now with Damien Calmet, US, or open 2possibilities.info should be able to take you there. Or on the TikTok, which is transgender and spiritual, or spiritual and transgender. That's all of it. But right now, let's take a deep breath. Let's take another deep cleansing breath. And as we breathe, let's just picture a light coming in from the top of our head. A golden, big golden light taking our mind, coming down through our chakras, aligning our heart, aligning our soul. And God of many names, we know that we have been called together tonight to learn of truths of the Spirit. For there are many ways, and they all lead to the same path. As we say many times, there are many ways to the top of the mountain, but they all go to the top of the mountain. We pray for the firemen, the people who've lost their homes, the people that feel hopeless in the Los Angeles area, the devastation. Knowing that everything is energy tonight, we send them hope, we send them strength, we send them courage. And if you happen to be watching this, remember, you're more resilient than you even knew that you were. And so it is. So I want to read something to you before I begin my talk tonight. It's, I will change your name. I will change your name. You shall no longer be called wounded, outcast, lonely, or afraid. I will change your name. Your name shall be confidence, joyfulness, overcoming one, faithfulness, friend of God, one who seeks my face. I will change your name. You no longer be called hopeless, misunderstood, overlooked, and dismayed. I will change your name. Your name shall be fabulous, gratefulness, compassionate one, high for power, chosen of God, and unsurpassing. I will change your name. You shall no longer be called damaged, fragile, weak, and shy. I will change your name. Your name shall be beloved, courageous, fearless one, radiant, child of God, one who seeks my face. I will change your name. So I want to talk about names tonight and what we call ourselves. It's important. We're going to start from the beginning with me. I was born with the name Stephen Bruce Ford. And my first name, Stephen, was named after the milkman, or after a derelict at hung out at my grandfather's gas station. The name Bruce was named after the milkman. Now, when I was born, I had a brother. And my brother was paralyzed from a brain tumor completely, couldn't speak, had to be fed, hand-fed, needed a lot of care, a lot of attention. But as a child, I didn't see that lot of care and a lot of attention. All I saw was that I wasn't getting my needs met. I wasn't being taken care of. And my brother's name was Charles Lee. And Charles was my father's first name, and Lee was my grandfather's first name. So in my mind, he was the favored one. He was the one that was chosen. And in the beginning, before I was born, my mother had said to my father, I don't want this child anyway. I don't want this baby anyway. So I came into the world with the energy of feeling not wanted, not appreciated, already abandoned, and to the fact where she left me at the hospital when I was born. And I went to live with my grandparents who took care of my brother Charles Lee. But he needed so much care, and he was a handful. So I was sort of an extra obligation to have to take care of. And research tells us that in the first few years of a child's life, that is where you get your grounding, that is where you get your roots, that is where you get your feelings and your self-esteem even about yourself. So where a lot of kids come in feeling loved and appreciated and oh, goo goo gaga, ah la la la, that's not the feeling that I had. So all through my life, my early days, I always felt like I didn't belong. I felt like I didn't fit in. My grandmother was a gospel singer in the big tent revivals. I remember being in a bassinet right on the front row when Oral Roberts would come and pray for people, and he would say, heal. And I remember at church, one of the ladies, she would say, oh, Stevie, how are you? And I just hated that name. And I didn't like the name Bruce. And so as I grew later, well, I went to live in foster care at some point, but that's a whole different story. But living in the foster care, my name changed at different times. My name's been Richard. My name's been John. I've been most every ethnic group you could think of. And whatever group I would go to be with, then that's what my name would be. I remember once I had left my grandparents and early on, like 3 or 4, and that I wasn't living with them any longer. And I went to live with this couple that found me in the trailer, and that's a whole story in itself. And his name was George. And we drove to Grants Pass, Oregon. The reason I knew it was Grants Pass is because we drove in at night and the P had burned out. So just Grants Ass is all it said. But I remember her taking me to school and her saying, this is our son, George Jr. So I became George Jr. for a while. And then when something happened in that family or that relationship, I moved on to a different family and I became a different name. So I learned early on that you can create whatever name it is that you want to be. And I think this is an important point, that for all of my life, all of my young life, the name Stephen Bruce Ford just did not fit, just didn't fit. And I became an evangelist, a TV evangelist, minister, blah, 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 whole story in itself. But there came a time when I started searching for another name, and by this time I had left the ministry, and I thought, oh, I could be Adrian. I wanted to be something exotic, because during some of this time I also had been treated for a dissociative identity disorder, which had nothing to do with transgender, but a whole different issue. And I was on the gospel music circuit, and I was at the Oakland Auditorium in Northern California with a group of artists. And the artist, whether it's secular group or whether it's gospel, artists are artists. And, could you do the light different over here? Oh, I really don't want to sing after her. Can you put me in this spot here? And so here's all this going on during rehearsal. And during this time, a group called the Hawaiians were on the docket. And a lady from the Hawaiians walked in the room, and I believed her name to be Damien. That is what I believed her name to be. Now, since then, I've heard it could have been something else, but I believed it to be Damien. And what was so interesting about this experience, and people can change your thought pattern, but they can't take away your experience. So what was so interesting in this experience that is that when the moment she walked into the room, without saying one single word or gesturing at all, you knew there was an energy of love, of acceptance, of forgiveness, of these qualities that I have mentioned in the name of radiance, of joyousness, of fabulousness, of gracefulness, of compassion, of beloved, courageous. You knew that God loved you, period, no matter what was going on. You knew that you belonged on this planet. And it was in that moment in time that I said, that's for me. That's for me. I want that. And I began an internal journey at that moment. And when I chose my name, I chose Damien because I felt like it was her name. And whenever I would say my name, I am Damien, I always was reminded of those characters. Because you see, when I walk into a room and when you listen to me speak, even on these tapes, I want you to know that you are loved. I want you to know that you are okay. I want you to know that you are a winner. I want you to know that whatever struggle that you are going through, that you can also choose to grow through. And as I've said sometimes, if you're going through hell, just keep on going. Keep on going. You'll get out of it. So what's in a name? So a while back, I started the physical transition. And the conversation with people was, well, you have to have a different name. You can't be Damien. So I thought, okay, let's just make it easy and let's just be D, because that's going to be easy for people to remember, and they don't have to come up with some name like, and there's nothing wrong with Taylor or whatever it would be, Hope. There's nothing wrong with any of those names. I'm not saying there's anything wrong. I'm just saying that I wanted to come up with something easy, because sometimes when people know you as one name, it's difficult to give you call you by another name. And yet something with me inside didn't really ring as true. So I began to do a lot of searching on this inside internally. And what I've come to realize is that I started my transitioning from the inside out 30 years ago or more. I started my transitioning to become the authentic person, the one that's resilient, the one that's courageous, the one that is loving, the one that is forgiving. I started that journey years ago into the authenticity of being who I am in this human experience, understanding that I am my consciousness. I'm not this body. My consciousness inhabits this body and listens to my mind, or chooses not to listen sometimes to the insanity that goes on in my mind. But in understanding that and in growing in that, I begin to understand that the D part of me, where I had split off Damien as the male part and D as the female part, being two spirits, understanding masculinity and femininity. But the truth is, it's been Damien all along. It's been a coming together of the male and the female and the authenticity of showing up in this particular experience in life. Now, Wayne Dyer, who is a fabulous author and teacher who I heard speak many times, who has since passed, says this: your calling is not necessarily about performing a specific task or being in a certain occupation or living in a specific location. It's about sharing yourself in a creative, loving way, using the skills and interests that are inherent part of you, that are inherently a part of you. So what is inherently a part of me? Are those things that I mentioned: joyousness, forgiveness, teachableness, lovingness, nurturingness. And are these characteristics that you don't do, but you become? And out of your beingness, the doingness begins to come. So, while I say this is Dr. D, in many ways this is still Dr. Damien D. Calment, who's bringing you this message of love, hope, and triumph tonight. And I'm reminded of when I was an evangelist, and I was traveling, and I remember this church in Kansas City, Missouri, and I met this lady, and her name was Mary. And Mary was overweight. Well, can I just be real? Mary was big and fat, greasy fat. And Mary lived in a trailer, and Mary was very unhappy. And she would come to the services night after night. I was there several weeks in services. And night after night, she would ask for prayer. So one night when she asked for prayer, I asked her to come and see me at the church office the next day. She came to see me, and we sat and we prayed. And I believe that Spirit guides us through our intuition. And when we listen to Spirit, we are moving in the right direction. But so often we listen to the ego mind, which is the edge God out, the small self mind. And at that particular time, I was able to really listen to Spirit. And I said, Mary, I said, how did you get your name? And see, at this time, I didn't understand about the names stuff. And It all had to be taught to me on a spiritual base. And she said, well, I was named after my sister's sister. And I said, really? And I said, and tell me about her. Well, when Mary described her sister's sister, it was like her describing herself. And I said, Mary, do you realize that you have just described yourself? So often, a name that we call ourselves, named after somebody else, the attribute, the consciousness of that name can resonate with us. Not always, but a lot of the times. You know, if your name is Daniel, then you're not a Danny in your energy, and you're not a Dan. And if your name is Dan, I know people that are Daniel, Dan, and Danny. They're all three have different types of energy that go with their name and what they call themselves. You know, I had mentioned, well, I don't even need to go there on what I was going to say. I was going to mention Jimmy Carter. Jimmy was never James. It was always Jimmy Carter. That was that warm folksiness that went with him. I remember the first time I met him because I used to do some work with his sister Ruth Carter Stapleton, who was a evangelist years and years ago. And I remember how warm and folksy and just down to earth that he was. That was one of the gifts that he had. Jimmy. It wasn't James. And so in learning this back to Mary, I said, Mary, in your mind and in your consciousness, can you do a meditation and a prayer? You don't have to do it now. And there is a name inside of you that you've been wanting to be. And that is the authentic person of who you are. So I kept in touch with Mary. To make a long story just a little longer, Mary ended up getting a trainer, losing weight, getting a divorce. Sometimes you have to do those things. Leaving that relationship, changing her name, going to school, studied to be a lawyer, became a first-rate lawyer, started finding who she really was in society and who she had been all along, but had been covered up by somebody else's name that she was wearing. So, what did you call me? What is the name that who you are? Precious, courageous, overcoming, resilient, loving, kindness. Are those who you are from the inside out? Then let the name of who you are reflect that. I am of the belief, and this is my personal belief, of course, that parents probably should just say to their child when they're born, your father and I have given you such and such a name, and it is a temporary name that we chose, and the reason we chose it was X, Y, and Z. And however, we want you to choose who you feel that you are from the inside out. So within the first 5 years before you go to kindergarten or whatever, when you have come to a place that you have chosen the name of who you are, then let us know so we can begin to support you in that name. That name that you are, because you are a spiritual being that has come to the planet. You've come to the Earth School to play. You've come to the Earth School to give love. You've come to the Earth School to share your gifts. And if you're wearing a mask of being somebody else, you cannot really share your gifts. So my journey of transitioning, I don't like the word coming out. I don't know that I ever was in and on anything really. I've always been aspects of me. So 40 years ago, maybe, in the transitioning, I started transitioning from the inside out. And Dr. D, and Reverend Dr. Damien D are integrated into the same human experience, which allows me to share with you from a place of love, from a place of truth, from a place of compassion, from a place of being able to say, I believe in you, and you're worth it. So what do you call yourself tonight? What do you call yourself? Do you have the courage to change your name if you would like to? You don't need my permission, but I'm giving you my permission. I'm giving you my permission to change your name tonight if you would like to. Until the next video, this is Reverend Damien, Dr. D, saying, I love you. The universe loves you. And the universe is conspiring for your success. And just as we leave, and we listen to the beautiful music that we've listened through this talk, let's release any stress. Let's release any anxiety. Stress and anxiety will kill you. And let's fill our total being with peace, total being with self-acceptance, total being with self-esteem, total being with non-judgmentalness, total being with compassion. And we all say amen. And so it is.